Well, today we got proof that the scientists were saying one thing and Boris Johnson was saying and doing another. And this was not a difference on some minor technical detail. This was about something as basic as, is it safe to shake hands? A bit of background first. On Friday, February the 28th, there was no doubt coronavirus was spreading around the world. The World Health Organization put the number of deaths in China at more than 2,700. And closer to home, it was spreading. On that last day in February, Italy reported 650 cases and 17 deaths, both big increases on the previous day. It was also reported that Friday the virus may have circulated in northern Italy for weeks before being detected, meaning the reality was probably much worse even than those numbers. That was the picture on the Friday. Boris Johnson spent that weekend at Chequers and finally chaired his first Cobra meeting about COVID-19 the following Monday, the 2nd of March. The next day, Boris Johnson held the first briefing for the media. He said this:
"Our country remains extremely well prepared, as it has been since the outbreak began in Wuhan several months ago."
At that same news conference on March the 3rd, Boris Johnson urged people to wash their hands for the length of time it takes to sing Happy Birthday twice. It was the single most important thing we could do, he said. And then,
"I want to stress that for the vast majority of the people of this country, we should be going about our business as usual."
And he told us how much he was shaking people's hands, even the hands of people with the virus.
I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody, you'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands.
Less than 2 weeks later, there were more than 1,300 coronavirus cases and 35 confirmed deaths in the UK. As I said a moment ago, the government always says it did the right things at the right time and acted on the scientific advice. What we learned today was there was a meeting of the Independent Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Behaviours, which advises SAGE, that Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies. Guess what the Independent Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Behaviours said on March the 3rd. And remember, that's the same day Boris Johnson was telling us this.
I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody, you'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands.
That day, the Independent Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Behaviours wrote these words: "Government should advise against greetings such as shaking hands and hugging, giving existing evidence about the importance of hand hygiene. A public message against shaking hands has additional value as a signal about the importance of hand hygiene. Promoting a replacement greeting or encouraging others to politely decline a proffered handshake may have benefit." So the scientific advice on March the 3rd was that the government should advise against greetings such as shaking hands and hugging. Not only did Boris Johnson say the same day,
"I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody, you'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands."
But 2 days later, he was shaking hands on national television with Holly and Phil. The day after that, he was shaking hands at a Conservative Party conference. And 3 days after that, he was shaking hands at Westminster Abbey. Even though the scientific advice on March the 3rd had been, government should advise against greetings such as shaking hands and hugging. So the next time we hear the government say it did the right things at the right time and acted on the scientific advice, maybe we should shake our heads, if not our hands.